بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome you to our first program on Towards Understanding Aqeedah, hopefully the first of 12 programs where we will try to explore and explain the basic fundamentals of our religion. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you for those people who have expressed interest in this course. About 3 months ago, back in July, Allama Shah Reza Sahab, Damat Barakatuhul Ali, he held a meeting with myself and Mufti Sahab, and he explained to me that he found that a lot of the youngsters were coming to him on a continuous basis, and a lot of the questions were related to the basics of Aqeedah, of faith. And Allama Sahab explained to myself and Mufti Sahab how it seemed that our youth were not sure about what exactly Aqeedah is, what exactly it entails, and what do we need to know on a very primary basis about our beliefs. And so with myself and with Mufti Sahab, he asked for myself to formulate, to design a course by which we could explain in the most simplest forms what our beliefs are. And this then really is the outcome of Allama Sahab's spiritual and academic input. It is his idea, it is his brainchild, and we are just merely delivering it. In terms of format, you will already know from the poster, hopefully, that there will be 12 programs. And inshallah ta'ala, each of these programs will, the actual lecture itself, we hope not to go over about 50 minutes. And they will last for approximately 12 weeks. The lecture itself will be just under an hour, and then in each session we certainly will allow sufficient time for people to ask questions related to what we have explained in each lesson. And then inshallah at the end we will have a small session where you can take some refreshments with you. At the end of each session, from the notes that I give you, the presentation you're going to see now on the PowerPoint is going to be a very simple one. It's not going to contain so much detail. You need not worry about writing things down. You need not worry about the references. You need not worry about some terminology. If it goes over your head, what we have done is we've printed out a detailed handout, something that you can take away with you for today. And in that there will be the detail, the references, the Quranic references that we have included. And if there is anything missing from those notes, then by all means contact us through the Islamic Center website, where you can ask questions, or you can approach me afterwards, or throughout the week, or next week perhaps as well, where you can supplement these questions. Getting into the program then, inshallah we will begin then. And I think first and foremost we will have to, like we do in the traditional seminary courses, is when we're explaining something, when we're explaining a certain word or a certain field of knowledge, we have to start with the basics. So we'll start with the definition of what Aqeedah is. Where does the word come from in Arabic? What does it denote? What does it actually entail? Like with all words in Arabic, what you will find is that each and every word has at least 3 root letters. And for the word Aqeedah, the 3 root letters are Ain, Qaf and Dal. Aqada. Look at the classic dictionaries, look at the root words of this, and what you will find is that this means to tie or to bind something, to put something together, to knot something. So for example, if I have a rope and I want to tie it together, then I will say Aqadtul habal, I have tied it together. That is the literal meaning of it. Likewise, stemming from that, you will find that the Arabs, that when there is a contract with someone, or an agreement with someone, or a covenant, then they will use the same word. They will say that it means aqad. Why? Because by nature you will find that when you have a contract with someone, you are tying something together, you are binding them together. When you have an agreement, you are tying the knots in essence. So it comes from the same word. And likewise, some of you might realize that sometimes when we're speaking about marriage and the actual ceremony of the nikah, we sometimes talk about the aqd nikah. And aqd nikah literally means the contract of the nikah, of the ceremony. Why? Because you are tying yourself down. How does that relate to Aqeedah, which we know means beliefs and doctrines? Well, there's 2 ways it relates to it. Firstly, Aqeedah is so called, which comes from the word to tie and bind, is because Aqeedah, our beliefs, are those things which tie and bind all Muslims together. So it's like the common thread. It's something that you and I have, every single one of us has in common. So like, we won't have necessarily our language or our color or creed in common with all Muslims throughout the world. But what we will share is our Aqeedah, is our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the messengers and so forth. So that's one way of interpreting what Aqeedah means, relating back to the root word. That it means something that ties and binds all Muslims together. The other way we can look at it is that Aqeedah is so called because this is a contract in essence. It is an agreement that we have as part of our religion. That it's almost a written document by which, or a verbal document, where we say that as Muslims we hereby sign up to agree that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. We agree that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last messenger. So going back to the root word of aqada, which means to tie, which means to contract, we can see how that relates to the meaning that we come across, the meaning that we are familiar with, this idea of beliefs, doctrines, aqaid, the basic convictions that we have regarding our religion. What does it cover? What field or what area does Aqeedah cover? In essence, it's possible to identify three main areas that Aqeedah covers. The first one, al-ilahiyat. This comes from the word ilahun. Now ilahun, you will be familiar with la ilaha. It means God. So anything related to God, that is the first area that Aqeedah will cover. So our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Tawheed, His oneness, Shirk, those people who associate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is possible for Allah, what is impossible for Him, what are His attributes. All of these will come under the sphere of ilahiyat. The second area which our Aqeedah covers is that of an-nabuwat. And again, you can see where the word has come from. It comes from the word Nabi. And Nabi means prophet. Anything related to our beliefs in prophets is called an-nabuwat. And that is another sphere, another area that Aqeedah will cover. The nature of the prophets, their stories, what is possible for them, what is impossible for them, the scriptures that they brought, the guidance that they brought, what kind of belief we have about them, that would all come under this sphere. Finally, quite importantly, the third sphere that Aqeedah will cover is what's called sam'iyat, which literally means heard sources. In namaz, when we perform salah and when we come from ruku, we say Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, which translates as what? Allah has heard. Sami'a in Arabic means to hear, to listen. So as far as we're concerned in the field of Aqeedah, sam'iyat relates to all of those areas which we would not otherwise know except from a heard source. Meaning who? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His beloved messenger. Something that our own intellect won't be able to comprehend. Something that our own reason won't be able to understand. The only way we can know of it is because Allah has told us in the Quran, or because the Prophet has told us in his ahadith. This area is what we call as-sam'iyat. I'll give you a quick example. We are told and we are required to believe as Muslims that every single person, not just Muslims, will be questioned in the grave. That when a person dies, then as the burial is completed, then the angels come and they ask 3 questions about Allah, about Islam, and about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the fundamental beliefs as Muslims, that we will be questioned, and how the Muslims will give the right answer, and how the non-Muslims will hesitate and not give a correct answer. We have to believe this. But how did we actually come to know about that? Could we have known this through our own senses? Could we have rationally decided for ourselves that yes, it's possible, there must be some kind of questioning in the grave? It's impossible. The only way we know it is because the Prophet ﷺ told us. So there is no other way that we can actually understand this. Likewise, on the Day of Judgment, for example, we are told that there will be a mizan, a scale. And each and every person, his good a'mal actions and his bad a'mal, his actions, they will be weighed on a scale. And then depending on which side is heavier, that person will be sent to heaven or hell. That our intellect couldn't actually figure this out ourselves. The only way we know it is because the Quran has told us. وَالْوَزْنُ يَوْمَ إِذٍ الْحَقِّ. That the wazn on that day is truthful. So that is how we have come to believe it. These are the three main areas in essence that cover the area of Aqeedah. A quick point on why Aqeedah is important. In short, and this I won't go into too much detail on this because it is quite obvious to us all that the acceptance of our actions is purely dependent on our Aqeedah, on our faith. That whatever we do, how many salahs we perform, when we fast in the month of Ramadan, when we perform Hajj, all of that is dependent upon the right beliefs. That if we had the right beliefs with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it's accepted. Unfortunately, if we have the incorrect beliefs, then it will be rejected. Otherwise, we see in the Holy Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes people who perform salah. Yet despite performing salah, they are subject to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dismay. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. That woe to those people who perform salah, but they perform it in a lazy fashion. They do it to show off to others. Likewise, the prime example of that is Iblis, is Shaitan himself. That in terms of a'mal, we are told in the tafsir of the Holy Quran that he had plenty of good actions. That prior to the creation of Adam alayhi salam, that he worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for thousands of years. And he was given the title of the teacher, the ustad of the angels. That he had plenty of good actions, but his downfall, and the reason why he is cursed and he is away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is why? Because he went wrong with Aqeedah. He had the wrong beliefs. Specifically, he had the wrong beliefs to do with the Anbiya Karam. And he foolishly thought that he was actually better than Adam alayhi salam. خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. That you created me from fire and you created him from clay, therefore I am better. So he went wrong with Aqeedah. So in short, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only accepts our good a'mal once we have the right iman, belief. And we have just, mashallah, gone through the month of Ramadan, where I'm sure all of you would have completed the recitation of the Holy Quran. How many times did you come across verses such as إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ? Time and time again you would have come across that verse. What does that mean? Indeed, those people who believe and perform good actions. Every time, nowhere in the Quran does it say الَّذِينَ عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَآمَنُوا. Those people who perform good actions and have iman. Iman always comes first. Iman is the condition that you believe first and then do good actions. لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٌ نَعِيمٌ. For them are the gardens, for them is the jaza, for them is the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this itself, the tartib, the order of the verse, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those people who believe and have good actions. This suggests that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only accept our a'mal once we have the right belief with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where does our Aqeedah come from? Initially, as the raw source, it comes from the Quran and Sunnah. Directly from the verses from the Holy Quran and from the ahadith, the sayings of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It was left, however, to the later scholars, the scholars of this ummah, to actually classify that, to put that into some kind of book form, or to formulate it and to put it into section. That has been left to the ulama after the beloved Messenger alayhi salam. And where we have mentioned, there are so many scholars to mention, but certainly where we have mentioned in terms of formulating our Aqeedah is the four great Imams. Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad, Imam Malik. They certainly had a great hand, and in particular Imam Shafi in his works Al-Um, he mashallah wrote some brilliant works on the basics of our Aqeedah. Then mainly a lot of the 4th century scholars, we find the likes of Imam Maturidi, we find the likes of Imam Ash'ari, we find the likes of Imam Tahawi. These figures were instrumental in trying to formulate and in trying to classify where our Aqeedah actually comes from.